Hello guys, welcome to RS Code Labs. Today we are going to discuss about exception concept in Java. An exception is an unexpected event that occurs during the execution of a program and disrupting the normal flow, which means a problem occurs or an exception occurs during execution of the program. Okay, exceptions occurs due to logical errors, invalid inputs, and hardware failures so on. And also, Java provides a robust exception handling mechanism to handle such errors, and also it prevents the program crashes. And what happens when an exception occurs in our program? When an exception occurs, the program stops suddenly. Then JVM creates an exception of the respective type, which means whenever an exception occurs, the execution of the program will stop suddenly. JVM creates an object inside the heap area with respect to exception type. Then JVM searches for an exception handling mechanism. Later, JVM searches for an exception handling mechanism. If exception handling mechanism is present, it handles the exception and continue the execution of the program. And if no handling mechanism is present, the default exception handler terminates the program. Which means if the exception handling mechanism is not present, then defaultly exception handler will handle the exception and execution of the program will stops. Yeah, exception handling mechanism in Java. The exception handling mechanism, which means it is used to handle the exception. And we can handle these exceptions using try, catch, and finally block. Okay, try. It defines a block of code, might throw an exception. Yes, inside the try block, we are writing the statements which are responsible for exception. Inside the try block, we are writing the risky code. Okay. When an exception occurs, JVM create an object inside heap area with respect to the exception type. Since JVM create an exception object, every object is having some address or reference, right? So, try block will throw the reference of a particular exception type to the catch block. Okay. Here try block will throw the reference to the catch block. Catch block is used to handle that exception if it occurs. Once after catching the reference, the statements which is present inside the catch block will get executed and the execution of the program will continues. Finally block, a block that always executes regardless of whether an exception occurred or not. Which means finally block is used to execute important instructions and also it will execute if exception is occurred, if exception is not occurred, if exception is handled and also if exception is not handled. Okay. And how to handle the exception in Java. As we already discussed, with the help of try, catch and finally blocks, we can handle exceptions in Java. Okay. Try block. A try block contains code that may generate an exception and the catch block catches and handle that exception. Here you can see. So it throws an exception object. In try block, here we are write exception causing statements and in catch block, here we are write exception handling statements. In try block, exception objects get created here and here used to handle the exceptions. And one more rule is catch block will execute only when try block throws a reference to the catch block. And we can't declare a catch block without try block. And also we can declare a catch once after declaring the try block. Okay. And next one is finally. Finally block always executes even if an exception occurs. And it is used to clean up the operations like closing files, database connections and so on. Here you can see the example. Before going to this example, you need to remember 2 points. First one try block can be followed by multiple catch blocks. Okay. Can be followed by multiple catch blocks. And next point is we can declare a catch block once after declaring a try block. Catch block once after declaring a try block. Okay. You need to remember these points. Okay. Here what we have seen now is an arithmetic exception is 10 by 0 and also there are few like exceptions, array index, out of bound, and there are different types of exceptions. So for each exception you can write separate catch block. Okay. Example, here I have written exception. Here exception is a generic one, so for any error it will support. Inside the try block, here I am writing the exception causing statement. In catch block, here if you are not sure about what kind of exception it is, then you could simply write an exception. It is a parent class. It can accept all kind of exception. Here E is just a variable assigning object to this class, and just give us there is no specific thing. Even you can go any of your choice. Here I give ET. It will not get any error. Whatever you want to give here, you can. Okay. And next one is finally block. So finally block is used to execute important instructions. Even exception is occurred, it will execute the statement. If exception is not occurred, even though it is execute the statement. Let's run the code. Let's see what happens. Here you can see I catch exception, and finally block also it got executed. Okay. Then if you want to catch a specific exception, then you have for this 10 by 0, which is infinity. This exception called arithmetic exception, I guess. So let's create one more catch block. Here I'm giving arithmetic exception. Okay. Here I'm giving arithmetic exception, and I catch arithmetic exception. Let's run the code. So here I'm printing the message as I catch arithmetic exception. So here try block is checking for its related error in catch block. It feels that arithmetic exception is the right one. So it went to this loop and printed. So this time arithmetic exception is printed because the error is related to this. Okay, let's run the code. Here you can see I catch arithmetic exception, and finally block also printed. Yeah, as I said, we can use multiple catch blocks. So I can create one more index out of bound exception. So here I comment this one, and this time I would like to change the exception. So I will declare an array. So int arr equals to new int of, I'm giving the size as 5. Okay. Inside the catch block, I would say to print arr 7. Okay. So here I will declare an array, and I would say to print here array of 7. Okay. Here I will change this message index out of bounds exception. Okay. In this code, you will get an error index out of bound exception. Okay. Here you can see catch index out of bound exception. Why? Because here I define the size as 5, but I'm trying to print the index 7, which is index out of bound exception. Okay. So try is checking for this related error catch block, and it feels that is index out of bound exception is the right one. So it feels this one is right one, so that it went into this loop and printed the statement. So this time arithmetic exception is not printed because the error is not related to that. Error is related to index out of bound exception. So it prints this statement. Okay.